Welcome to the 18th video in my FPS character controller tutorial series playlist. In this video, we are going to be implementing this HUD, including this weapon switcher at the top, which implements source-like weapon switching. So you got the weapon slots, and then so I'm pressing 4 right now. You can cycle through them, and you can cycle through them with the scroll wheel as well, very Source Engine style. And we're going to have the health bar implemented, as well as the ammo and the reactive crosshair, which reacts to ammunition. So we got ammo on the right and health on the left. So to get started, we're going to be using assets from the weapons asset pack. I'll have that link down below. It has assets for the crosshair as well as assets for the icons for the weapons if you're following along with this tutorial. And the first thing I'm going to do is create a folder in my weapon manager to house the HUD. And I think we're supposed to do lowercase in Godot. Someone mentioned to me, so boom, lowercase HUD. And I'm going to create, actually I'm going to go in my character and just create a control, call it PlayerHUD, put that on my character body 3D. And the HUD should be like stretched across the whole screen. So to do that, you can go in Layout, Anchors Preset, Full Rect for the Anchors preset. And that will basically just make sure the control node we add covers the entire screen, and it's going to fit the HUD maximized over the whole screen, basically. So that's important. And I'm actually going to rename this to PlayerHUD just because I realized it kind of looks like it's a weapon name if it's next to all the weapons named just HUD. So I'm going to put it in the PlayerHUD folder as well, and I'm going to do save branch as scene, and I'm going to put it in FPS controller, weapons manager, PlayerHUD, save it, and then now we'll have all of the HUD components contained within this HUD scene. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm also going to add a script, playerhud.gd, and we are going to have to add the logic for the HUD inside the PlayerHUD script. So there's a couple different components to this, the simplest of which would be probably the crosshair and the ammo and health. The weapon switching is going to be the more complex part, so I'm just going to knock out the crosshair and the ammo and health first because that's pretty easy and pretty quick to do. So let's do that real quick. So in the PlayerHUD, you can swap to the 2D view at the top in your PlayerHUD scene, and the green nodes are control nodes or UI nodes. These are nodes that all inherit from the base class for all GUI controls, the control node. So for the crosshair, I'm going to use a center container, and this basically centers all the contents of itself. So we can do the same thing as we did with the PlayerHUD. I want to maximize the layout, and I'll go anchors, full rect. So the center container is going to center anything that's inside of itself, being our crosshair, because we want it to be exactly in the center of the screen. So like I said at the start, the weapons asset pack zip file will be linked down below, and that's going to contain all these crosshair images. So I have a bunch of SVG images I made for our crosshair, and I've broken them into different components because, so we're going to have the center, and then the two sides, we're going to be able to like fade them out in a shader based on the health or the ammo. So to add the crosshairs, you can simply just add a bunch of texture rects. So we got 5 crosshairs, crosshair pieces. So I'm going to put the texture rect in the center, and I'm actually just going to make 5 of them and then drag on all of the crosshair pieces. And these crosshair SVGs were created with the center all in the same place, so you can just drag them all as the child of the center container, and then boom, we have the Half-Life looking crosshair just like that. Alright, so now if you go and save that, you'll see we now have a working crosshair basically over our player window. It's in the center of the screen because we put the center container. But I can no longer shoot, and I can no longer click to focus my window. So how I have my controller set up is I click, and then the window grabs input, and then I can move around the FPS controller like that. But because the player HUD is over top, everything is capturing the input, and I'm not able to get click events in my character controller anymore. So there's a setting for that in the control node. So if you select the root of the player HUD, and one thing to note, I'm editing this in the player HUD scene. You can also, if you like drop a scene in, you can edit here, but this is just like editing the instance settings. I'm editing, I guess this is not really that important, but it probably wouldn't make a difference if you're not reusing this HUD, but since I'm reusing it, or I want it to be modular, I'm editing the actual HUD scene and not the HUD object instance, which is in the character body 3D. Small difference, but could get confusing. Sometimes like I edit the instances, and I don't edit the original scene. Just something to take note of in Godot. But yeah, so the setting to allow the mouse to pass through is under the mouse tab in the control node. So I'll select the player HUD, mouse tab, drop down in the control node, and you can set it to mouse ignore, and that's just going to ignore all mouse events. So yeah, we'll not receive any mouse events, and they'll just go through to whatever is underneath it, if that's like another control node, or if that is, in my case, the 3D scene, which I'm trying to capture a mouse input for. And pass is pretty similar, but I think how it works is that it's only going to capture input if there's like a button or something. So I think pass would work too, but I'm going to set mine to ignore because I'm never going to be using any mouse input on our HUD. It's all just going to be it's all just going to be like with keyboard shortcuts or with the scroll wheel, which we don't need to capture mouse input for on the control of the HUD at least. And now it's working again. I can click and focus into my window. And we have a working crosshair that is perfectly in the center of the screen with our center container node. All right, next I'm gonna quickly rename all of these nodes to give them proper names for the crosshairs. So I'll show you all the names for these. And so obviously dot is the dot in the center, and the outlines are the little outline pieces. And then the health bar, I'm going to have this left bar be health, and I'm going to make it transparent. So like if it's at 50% health, I'm going to have it act as like a little health bar notifier on the crosshair, similar to how Half-Life has. And this one, ammo bar. I think I spelled ammo bar outline wrong. Ammo bar. So this bar on the right here, the center piece, is going to indicate the ammo percentage of the current weapon, how full the ammo is. And yeah, the ammo bar outline. So I gave these proper names, and now we'll set it up so they become transparent as you lose health or as you lose ammo. All right, so to do this, where the health bar and ammo bar are going to slowly go down with the health of the character controller, we're going to use a shader. So you can select the text direct of the health or ammo bar, go down to canvas item, and then you can add a material and a shader material to further control the appearance of the rendering of it. We're going to add a new shader, and it's going to be a real simple shader. I'm just going to call it crosshair.gd shader and create. And if you never used shaders before, it's fine. Pretty simple setup here. So all a shader does is a fragment shader is going to be called for every single pixel. It's just like any function in programming. It's called for every single pixel, and then you need to give the output, which is going to be the color of that pixel. Essentially all it's doing. Vertex shader is pretty similar. It's called for every vertex on the mesh, and then you have to pass or return essentially the position of the vertex. You can get pretty complicated with shaders, but those are the gist of them. And yeah, we only need the fragment shader for this. And what we're going to do is set the color.a, the alpha of the color. And so if we set it to 0, you can see the health bar goes transparent. And then if we go and use the step function, so what the step function does is it sets one value. So the first value is the step we're trying to get up, and the second value is the value we're comparing against the step. So you see if the first value is above the second value. If it is, it can make it up the step, and the step returns 1. If it can't make it up the step, it's 0. So if this value is above the step, it returns 1, and we're setting the transparency of every pixel in the image to 1. And I don't want this part to go white, so instead I'm going to multiply it by the step. So if we multiply the already transparent areas by 1, it'll stay transparent. 1 times 0 is 0. But still, if we multiply the colored or opaque areas by 0 transparency, they'll go transparent. And what we're going to do here, so I'm going to use the value we're comparing up the step as the uv.y. And yeah, essentially now what we're doing is we're saying, is the uv.y of the pixel above halfway? If so, then we will make it transparent. Or, yeah, make it transparent. And the UV is actually upside down, I believe. So 0 would be, y is equals 0 would be up here, and y equals 1 would be down here. So, yeah, at the top, it would, the step function would turn 0, and the top half of the ammo bar is getting essentially made transparent. And we can add in a uniform to this, so I'll do uniform float filled %, and I'll default at 1.0. And then instead of using 0.5 as a step, I'll pass in the filled %. And then what we can do is go into the shader parameters of the shader material, which get created and updated when you create uniforms in your shader. And then you can control the filled %. And I'm realizing this is actually backwards, so I'm going to do 1.0 minus filled %. So now if it's filled 1, then it'll be completely filled up. And if it's filled 0%, it's at the bottom and it's completely transparent. And we can set this value from our code with the player's health. So we'll set the player's health percentage in the filled %. We'll do something similar in the ammo code as well. So one thing I'm going to do to modify the UV coordinates slightly is, so right now when it's at 0.9% filled, or like 90% filled, like it's still not going down to the health bar. And then when it's at like 0.4 or so, or 0.6, it looks like it's like fully empty. So I'm just going to modify the UV coordinates slightly. And now if it's at 99% or 96, you can already start to see it going down. So like the filled percentage is going by the filled percentage of the texture, which has this little white space. So I'm just multiplying the UV coordinate a little bit to make the like step function more accurate here, so it actually like lines up with so the filled percentage lines up with this bar a little bit better. And then one more thing you can do is add a hint range, and that's just I mean, you don't need to do that, but you can see now that we've added this hint range to the uniform float, now it won't let us adjust it past 0.0 or 1.0 as the max in the shader material. That doesn't really matter that much, but nice to know. Yeah, so now that we have this shader material, I can go and copy it, and we're going to basically just use it on both sides with the health and the ammo bar. So we just did the health bar, now we can control it with the shader. I'm going to paste the shader in, and you'll see it goes, like they're linked right now. Looks kind of cool, but they're linked right now, so we got to do make unique. And then now this shader will like be able to be adjusted separately because the materials aren't linked anymore. And now I know I'm going to need to modify these in code, so I'm going to click access as unique name on both. And then one thing I know I'm going to need to do, so I don't think my character body 3D has a health property right now, so I'm going to, that's all you need for the crosshair shader. I'm going to add a health property to my character controller. So I'll just put export var health equals 100, and then export var max health equals 100. And then we'll be able to use these in the player HUD and adjust the health bar accordingly. And then, yeah, at least on my character controller, I'm going to add a take damage function because, like, the grenades and rocket launcher and stuff and anything that does damage in my game is going to check for this function. And then we are going to apply the damage within this function. So any weapon will go and call this function on whatever the victim hit whatever victim is hit, and then we'll pass in the amount of damage that the weapon did. So I'm going to set take damage and do health minus equals damage in my player body. And then I'm going to go over to the HUD and let's get started on the HUD script. And then we are just going to go every process frame. We'll grab the health bar and I'm going to use this shader material that we set earlier. So I'll do health bar dot material, and then you can do set shader parameter. And then we're going to set this filled percent parameter that we set earlier. Filled percent. And then we're going to set it to, actually need to add some export variables. So export var player character body 3D. And I'm also going to export var weapon manager. And I'm going to set it to my weapon manager type. And then so I'll set the filled percent of the health bar to the player health divided by player dot max health. And that will get the health bar working. And then I'm going to do something very similar for the ammo bar. So the ammo bar, I'm going to create a variable ammo percent, and then I'll just do basically the same thing here, but I'm just going to set the filled percent of the ammo bar to ammo percent. And so to determine, this might be different for your weapon manager, but I'm going to say if weapon manager dot current weapon and weapon manager dot current weapon dot, so in my weapon manager I have, so you have your current ammo and you have reserve ammo and magazine capacity. So I wanted to like show how much ammo you have left in your mag like visually. So I'm going to use the magazine capacity variable. And then we will go and set that magazine capacity if it's greater than 0. So some weapons, like if they don't have any magazine capacity, it'd be 0. And or less than 0. So I'll just like I'll just show like a full ammo bar if it's like not applicable. And so in that case, I'll do ammo percent equals, and then it's current ammo, I think. So yeah, the current ammo that we had got in the mag divided by the full mag capacity. So like when it has like the full mag loaded, then the ammo bar will be full. And when it is empty or like starting to get empty, the ammo bar will start disappearing. And then I think just with that, oh, I actually forgot to set the variables here. So since I created the export variables for the player and the weapon manager on the HUD, I'm going to assign the player character body and the weapon manager export variables, which were up here. And now it will work. So, boom, you can see we have 2 full ammo bars, and as we shoot, the ammo bar on the right starts going down. And then if we take damage, so I know the rocket jumping does 10 damage per, both the bars start to go down. So we got 4 ammo left in our rocket mag. And if I shoot, it'll go to 0. When I reload, it goes back up, but yep, and then our health starts going down. And I didn't implement like dying, but yeah, in a real game, if it went down to 0, you would die. And boom, so we got health and ammo bars on the crosshair working. I also want to add on mine some debug info, so I'm going to real quick add that. So add a control node, and I'm going to make it layout mode anchors, cover the whole screen. And I'm going to add 2 labels for the FPS and for the player speed. And move them over to the right. Duplicate it. And then, yeah, I just resized both of these. And one kind of important thing is I set the anchors preset to top right. So, like, if the screen gets resized, it's always going to be relative to the top right of the screen, the positioning of these two labels. So, like, if you have a UI element that you want to scale properly with your screen, it's important to set up the anchors right. So, let's call it speed and FPS. And I'm just going to add very simple built-in scripts on these. So, like, to get the game FPS, you could just go like self.text equals FPS, and then you can do like plus string engine.get frames per second, and then that will update this label and show the actual FPS in game. And then we can do a similar thing here for the speed. And I'm gonna go another built-in script for the speed. And then I'm gonna do a pretty similar thing. Self.text equals player dot velocity dot length, and cast that to a string. And then you could have this all in like the main HUD script. I'm just like separating it out because like I like really simple built-in scripts like this that are non-essential because like I don't know, it just keeps things like cleaner sometimes. Always good to have less massive scripts. Plus miles per hour. And I guess that's not technically miles per hour. That's meters per second. And then boom, we have the debug info working. And then this is making like a really massive string. So I'm going to use the dot left function, which is on the string, and it takes the 5 leftmost characters. And I'll just say speed. And then now with the speed, we only get at most the 5 characters for the speed. And then also, I just realized with this, I created another problem. I have the mouse input being captured by this control node here. So I'm just going to set also in the debug info control node, mouse filter ignore. And then we got some working debug info for our HUD. Some basic debug info is nice to have. I just like seeing the speed as well. And now next, probably I'm going to add the health and ammo displays on the bottom right and bottom left. Okay, yeah, so now we are going to go and add health and ammo at the bottom left and bottom right here. So I'm going to go ahead and add a margin container. This is to create some spacing, and I'm going to go align or the layout mode for anchors. And then I'm going to set it to bottom wide. Have it take up the bottom of the screen here. And the margin container, it just gives like a bit of spacing on the sides of the container. So I'll do, let's say like 10 pixels wide on each of the sides of the box for now. And then I'm going to do an HBox container. And then I'll do panel, 2 panels, and then just a control node in the center. And then container sizing, I want to expand horizontally. And then, actually not expand horizontally, I want the control node in the middle to expand horizontally. While the 2 panels, we are gonna set the sizing of manually. So I'll go 200 pixels, looks decent. And then for this one as well, 200 pixels. And then within each of these, I'm going to add labels. So we'll do like health, 100, something like that. And then same thing over here. We'll do ammo. And then we need a mag capacity number over here as well. Oops. So one of these numbers is going to be how much ammo we have in our current mag. 15. 1111. And that's basically what I want. I just have to like massage it a bit more and get it looking half decent. So the label settings, you can set a label setting to customize the appearance of the font a bit more. So I know the colors of all these. I've got this color code if I want to use mine. 70CDFF. Boom. It's that nice blue color. And then I'm also going to set an outline around this. Slight outline. And then I think this should be a little bit bigger. And then, yeah, we can use the same color on all of the letters here. And then this, I'm actually going to make it 250, 250, 75, 250, 75. Looks pretty good for the size of the health and ammo boxes. And then I also want these to be like transparent. So from here on out, the tutorial like for the UI is going to get maybe more confusing. In my experience, learning how the UI works in Godot is a little bit confusing, just how all the nodes fit together. And sometimes there's a bit of wonkiness if you're trying to get stuff like aligned and positioned exactly correctly with how everything like flows. It's a bit confusing to me, but yeah, I'll show you what I did. I'll do my best to explain it. I don't understand 100% of everything. Like I had one problem with like trying to get some margin or something exactly right or centered. With getting stuff like centered perfectly and stuff, it's really confusing. I mean, it's like a famous thing in like even like HTML and CSS too, like how famously difficult it is to center a div vertically. So yeah, I guess that's maybe all UI systems. But for the panel, if you want to change the color of the panel, you have to assign a new style box. So you assign a theme override for the style box flat, and then you can go in here and then you can adjust the color and transparency of the box. So I'm going to make mine fully black and then 44 transparency. So all zeros. So what is that? 6 zeros and then 2C for the transparency. And then for the corner radius, I'm going to do 10, 10, 10, 10 to give it a small amount of roundedness. And then I'm going to grab this same style box and just plug it in over on the other panel as well, because I want them to be looking the same. All right, and then we got our little overlay boxes for the health and ammo. And I'm actually going to give this a little bit more of a margin, set it to 15 margin on all sides. This margin container containing the health and ammo boxes. And then I'm realizing I got to make the outline of this text blue as well. Decrease the size a little bit. Looks good. And then I'll grab these label settings and I'll plug it over here onto the ammo text too. Make a match. And then I guess I'll just copy the label settings to all of them, but I'm going to make unique on some of these, so because I'm going to change the fonts of some of these, or change the font size. So paste and make unique so they don't get all, so the font sizes don't get linked because I want different font sizes. Paste, make unique. And then I am just going to go and adjust the size and positions of these. So I adjusted the font sizes and I removed the outlines for the numbers because I didn't like how that looked. So this one's 54, 36, and 36, and the numbers don't have outline on the text. And then I'm just moving them around here till it looks right. And then I'm going to change important setting here, the horizontal and vertical alignment. So like the letters are aligned with the bottom of the label. That's helpful. And horizontal alignment, center, line with bottom. And then boom, I got my ammo and health display set up how I want. And I just copy and pasted this infinity symbol into the ammo because some of my weapons have infinite ammo. So pretty cool. You can just use Unicode symbols and draw an infinity symbol in there if you want. And now I'm going to give these labels some names so we can adjust them in code. So we got the health label here. We'll adjust that with the player's current health integer. And I'll assign unique names to all these. And I'm going to add unique names for the ammo box and the health box, because in some situations we might want to hide these from the HUD. Like for melee weapons, I'm not going to show an ammo box. And yeah, so we got clip label, reserve ammo label, health label, health box, and ammo box. And now we can access these in code and update them with the health and current ammo of the player. So let's go add in the code to do that. So in the PlayerHUD script, we can add to the process function. So this part at the top is just for the crosshair. So we'll organize that a little bit, update health and ammo bars just on the crosshair. And then down here, we'll update the health box display. Health box is pretty easy. You just set the text to a string with the player's health number. And for the ammo box, a little bit more complicated. I have like possible to be infinite ammo. So if there's no current weapon equipped, I'm going to hide the ammo box. Or if we just have infinite current ammo, then there's no real reason to show it either. So then otherwise, like if it's not infinite ammo and we have a weapon equipped, I'll show the weapon box, ammo box, and then we can update the clip ammo to just the weapon manager's current ammo. And then here I will do if weapon manager current ammo. So I have mine where you can set it to infinity for the reserve ammo. So if the reserve ammo is infinite, I'll do the infinity symbol. You can just copy paste that into Godot. It's Alt 236 is the alt code, but I don't think it works if you type it into Godot, or at least it doesn't for me. I just copy paste the infinity symbol in the code editor. And then otherwise we just set the reserve ammo label text to the reserve ammo, cast it to a string. And then yeah, I only want to show the reserve ammo label if reserve ammo is a thing for the weapon. So like for some weapons, I have reserve ammo disabled. And yeah. So boom. Now we got the ammo box and health box updating for the HUD. And boom, as their health goes down and their ammo goes down, they shift the numbers as well. So we got the crosshair, ammo and health working, and the ammo box, ammo and health working. So next is kind of like the meat of the tutorial, or I feel like it's probably going to take a bit longer than everything we did this far. It's probably going to be a pretty long video, but we have the source-like weapon switching. So we're actually finally going to implement weapon switching in this character controller, and we are going to add like how source engine games have those like weapon lists at the top you can scroll through. Gonna add that now, and yeah, we'll get onto that now in the code. All right, so in terms of creating the weapon switch menu, I'm going to go into my HUD and add an HBox container at the top here, and I'm just gonna call it weapon switch menu. And then I'm going to go to the layout, and I'm going to layout mode anchors again, and center or top wide, and then 130 height. And then I'm going to go to the alignment and choose center. This is the alignment of the children of the box container. And then within that, I'm going to add a VBox container. So inside the HBox container, I'm going to add a VBox container, and I'm just going to call this 1. So the direct children of this weapon switch menu, and I'm going to access that as a unique name so I could use it in code later. The direct children of this weapon switch menu are going to be the weapon slots. So like in Source Engine, you have like weapon slots like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and you can type 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 on your keyboard to cycle through the weapon slots. So we're going to go with that style here. Okay, so now within the VBox container, so this is like a horizontal list of basically items going side to side, and then the VBox is going to be all the weapons aligned vertically in each column of the weapons menu. So within the VBox container in here named 1, I am going to set up my nodes in a very specific way, and basically you just have to copy this if you want to follow this tutorial exactly. Some of this I just like, I mean, the gist is I have it set up to have a weapon name, an icon, and a slot number. But to get the exact positioning, I have these nodes set up in a very specific way, and I just had to honestly fiddle with it until I got everything centered and everything how I wanted. So if you want to follow along, you can copy my exact node structure. So each weapon box, I'm going to use a margin container. So create a margin container for the base of the little weapon box icon thing. And then I'm going to call that weapon select layout. And then I'm going to create a panel as a direct child of that. And I'm going to call that sized background panel. And then inside the panel, I'm going to create a label for the weapon number. And then I'm going to create another margin container as a child of the weapon select layout. Create a VBox container as a child of that. A margin container named icon margin as a child of the VBox container. Another margin container, and then a texture rect. And yeah, the texture rect here is going to be the weapon icon. So you can see, actually this is not the weapon, I'm going to call this slot number instead because that's more correct. So you can see this is going to be basically the little box that indicates what weapon it is. So like if it's the RPG, we'll have it it's in slot 1, and I think actually the RPG is in slot 4, but we'll call this slot 1. And then we have this panel. I'm going to increase the minimum size on the panel. So then it'll be this little gray box to display the weapon icon and name and whatnot on. And then I'm actually going to copy these other styles for these boxes here. So the theme overrides in the style box flat for the health box and ammo box. I'm actually just going to copy that, and I'm going to go and paste that into the style box for the sized background panel, just to get it looking the same as the rest of the UI, to get that nice like faded gray color. And then yeah, I'll also be displaying like the weapon icon. So say this is the deagle. I'm going to put that on the texture rect, and this is way too big right now. So if I set fit height proportional and keep aspect ratio, looks a little bit better. For this margin container here, I'm going to give it a margin of 4 on all sides. And I just like pre-figured out the right constants for this. I spent a while fiddling with it until it looked right. And then one thing I know I'm going to need is this blue color from the other labels. So I'm actually, I'll just copy this color blue because I want it to match in the weapon text. So I add that in the label settings on the numbers here. So font, turn it to the blue one. And same with the weapon name. I want it blue, same color blue. And then I'll add a margin of 40 here at the top. And then I'm gonna decrease the size of the font a bit for the weapon name. And for the slot number, I'm gonna increase it. And also throw an outline on there too. This blue color, make it a little bit more defined. And move the position a little bit in to give it some spacing from the corner. And now this margin container here, I'm going to give it some margins on the left and the right of 14 pixels for the icon. The weapon name, I'm going to center it. It's a deagle. I mean, it doesn't really matter because we're going to change this in code. But it was just bothering me. That was the different picture than it was different name. And now for the weapon icon, I'm going to set custom minimum size to 133. And now it's kind of looking right. And you can see just like how many little settings I had to fiddle with to get this looking right. And this particular setup here, like some of these margin containers, I just had to like add and fiddle with it and change until it was like everything was centered properly and stuff and everything was lined up. Because there's a couple things with like getting the margins right and getting the centering right where it's just like not super clear, the setup of things, and I don't fully understand it. I feel like you'd have to be really familiar with how the layout system works in Godot to, you know, perfectly be able to figure it out. But yeah, usually the strat with the layout stuff is you just got to fiddle with it for a while and experiment with a few different layouts until you find a setup that looks right and that works. And yeah, these icons, they're in the weapon asset pack in the description that I mentioned at the start as well, that you probably already have if you're following this far in. But yeah, we're going to be using these weapon icons on our weapon resources to allow them to be shown on the HUD with a name and a weapon. And as a matter of fact, I'm actually going to go through and do that right now. So in my weapon resource, I'm going to add export variables for the name, which will be a string, and export var icon, which is a texture 2D, and we'll be able to assign on our weapon resources a name and an icon for how it should be displayed in the HUD. So yeah, I'm just going to add the name, so it's a deagle, add the deagle name, add the icon, and then I'm just going to real quick do that for all my weapons. Alright, so I've gone and assigned a name and an icon to all of my weapons, so now they are ready to be displayed in the HUD weapon select menu. So I'm going to save this template that I created, and like the basic idea you can see, like we have this vertical box container, and we're going to have like a column of all of our weapons, and then we'll have the different slots. So we'll have this like multiple columns of weapons we can switch to essentially. And we'll collapse the ones that aren't being hovered over to save space on the screen so you can scroll through them all. So yeah, I'll go weapon select layout save branches scene, and I'm going to save it in my HUD folder as weapon select layout.tscn. And then I'm going to go into the weapon select layout scene, and I'm going to assign a script to it. And I'm just going to, let's see, no, I won't make it a built-in script, but it's just going to be a very simple script on the weapon select layout that allows us to assign the image and whatnot and the name and have it update properly. So yeah, I'm going to add 6 export variables to the top of the script here. And then I'm going to add this function update visibility to update the visibility and sizing of these layout components here. And then pretty simple few variables we're going to set here. So like just set the weapon name to the weapon name that we pass in as a string. Set the slot number as a slot number we pass in. Texture as the weapon icon texture we pass in. Only make the weapon icon visible if the show weapon icon is set to true, and we're only going to show the weapon name if we have it so-called expanded. So like when we're not hovering over a weapon, it just kind of compresses into a smaller view of it so we can scroll through them all. And then same thing with the slot number, we only show the slot if this variable is enabled. And then yeah, we're going to decrease the minimum size of this sized background panel if it's not expanded, if we're not hovering over the weapon basically. And same thing with the icon margin. So there's like a tiny margin above the icon if it is expanded, and if we're showing the weapon icon, otherwise it's a smaller margin. You can like adjust these values to whatever you want. It's not super important, but I just like fiddled this a bit until I got to this, which looked right to me for like scrolling through the HUD. I was just like tweaking it, and that's how I came up with these values. So if you're not following this exactly, it's fine. And yeah, that's all we need for the script of the weapon select layout. And now we're all done with that, and we can get on to creating the actual HUD script. And actually, before we do that, I just remember we need to add two more things. So like, yeah, in Source Engine, how it works is like in CSS, your deagle is always in the same slot. Like deagle, I think, is 2 and knife is 3. And it's always in the same slot regardless of, you know, what game you pick it up in. It's like it's just always assigned to that number, and it's always going to be assigned to the same slot position within the slot. So yeah, you also have to assign like a slot for your weapons, and then I'm gonna have a maximum 6 slots. So I'm gonna go through and set the slots of like the deagle and grenade and P90 and knife and whatnot. Like, yeah, I know my deagle is in slot 2. Knife is in slot 3, just because that is muscle memory from Counter-Strike. Knife should always be on 3 and deagle's on 2. And yeah, you can rearrange your weapons in whatever slots you want. And then the slot priority is like, if it has a higher priority, it'll be closer to the top, I think. Or maybe it's reversed. Well, you could change it in your code, whichever which. But this controls the ordering. It's in the weapon column. So it will be in the same exact position every time. So like, that's kind of important. Like, so like if I'm switching to my grenade, I know it's always like 4-4. I just tap 4 twice and then I quick switch to my grenade. So like it's kind of important for it to be like in the same position, or it's like a nice thing to have if it's always aligned in the same position. So slot and slot priority. So yeah, I set the slots on our weapons, and then of course also on your weapon manager, if you're following this tutorial, you're gonna need to have multiple equipped weapons on it. So I'm going to go into my weapon manager, and I'm going to create under equipped weapon, or under current weapons, I'm going to create an equipped weapons array. And then with that, you can go into like your character controller or weapon manager, and then you can go in this weapon resource array, and then you can assign an array of weapon resources. So I'm going to equip all of the weapons I have onto mine. So deagle, grenade, knife, P90, and RPG. Alright, now we are actually ready to go into our HUD code. And the code for like getting the source-like weapon switching to work exactly is kind of like specific. And I don't know of any like way to do this other than just jumping right into it. So like the weapon is going to like fade in and out pretty quickly. So like if you open the menu, it'll stay open for a short duration, and then it'll like quickly fade out after that duration. So it's going to stay open for 2 seconds. And then there'll be a 250-second grace period where it's like fading out, and the menu will just disappear if you don't select a weapon and confirm it. And then we're going to have a currently hovered weapon. And then this last activated menu is like the game ticks milliseconds that we last activated the menu. And then from the time we last activated it, we are going to get the weapon menu visibility from this big calculation right here. So we're doing clamp F, so we're clamping between 0 and 1 and doing this big calculation. So time.getTicks milliseconds minus the last activated menu plus the weapon menu stay duration. So basically, if this is going to be greater than, or if the time passed since we last activated the menu, if the time passed has, so we're going to get the last activated menu time plus the time it should stay open. So like this will basically give us like the time the menu should start closing. And then we get and by subtracting this from the current time, we get like basically the time that has passed the time it should stay open. And then over that time, we're going to fade it out. So like this should be between 0 or the weapon fade duration. So as the time since it closed, or since it should have closed, approaches the weapon fade duration, we fade it out from 0 to 1 by dividing it there. And then we're clamping it, so it's always going to be between 1 and 0. And so when it's fully passed into the weapon fade duration, this will be 1. So that means it should be fully transparent at that point. So we do 1 minus 1 is 0. So once we get to the weapon switch menu fade duration, the visibility will be 0. Hopefully that makes sense. And there's a couple more pieces of complex code here to get the exact behavior we want. Okay, so then I'm going to add another utility function, and I'm going to add this function get all weapons ordered. And I need to order the weapons in terms of their slot number and slot priority to set up the HUD, or set up the weapon menu. So I'm going to paste all this in, and a little complex what we're doing here. So we get the list of weapons, so I'm going to grab the weapon manager's equipped weapons array, and I'm doing .slice0. So this is just duplicating the array. So slice, so take a copy of the array from position 0 on, and this just copies the array so I can manipulate it and sort it without affecting the original. So then I go and do weapons.sortCustom, and this is a function that allows you to pass in a sort lambda function. So you pass in a function that decides how the array gets sorted. And obviously I want to sort them from their slot number and their slot priority. So if you look up symbol on this function, what it says is that it calls the function as many times as necessary that you pass in, receiving 2 array elements as arguments. The function should return true if the first element should be moved behind the second one, otherwise it should be false. And basically what it says behind here, but on the official docs it says before. So if you return true from the function, then the first element should be first, otherwise return false. So what I'm going to do is here, if they're in the same slot, or if their slot numbers are different, then we can just return if weapon 1 slot is less than weapon 2 slot, because we want to return true. Because we want weapon 1, if it has a lower slot, to be sorted first. So we're sorting the weapons first by their slot, and then secondarily we need to sort them by their slot priority. And so boom, we sort them by their slots here, but if their slots are equal, then we need to go and sort them by their slot priority, not just their slots. So I get the difference between their slot priorities. And then also I'm doing here this part, so I'm getting the resource ID of the weapon. So like if it just so happens that their slot priorities are the same as well, like if you didn't even bother to set it, this is just like a trick that I decided to put in so they would always be in the same order, even if you didn't set the slot priorities for them. So like I'm comparing so like if the difference of the slot priorities is also the same, if they're like the same slot priority, then we return if the difference is less than 0, which would be if slot 2 is greater than slot 1, just like this comparison. Otherwise, we do this portion right here. So we compare their resource IDs if there's no other way we can basically break the tie of how we should order them. So hopefully that makes sense. Getting really into the weeds with the explanations here, but I think some people might like the explanations. I don't know. Let me know in the comments if anyone's even watching at this point. But okay, yeah, so we got this set up, and now we have a function to grab all of our weapons in order so we can set up the HUD with them. Okay, so now that we got those defined, we're going to run through, add a bunch more functions here. So get weapons in slot, we're going to utilize the get weapons ordered, and then we are going to filter for all the weapons in the current slot. And also to note, they will be in order because we are ordering the weapons first and then filtering out only for the weapons that are in the slot that we pass in. And then I'm going to add this function, which is going to be key for cycling through the weapons, like with the scroll wheel. So a bunch of logic here. We are going to, I'm also going to add this show weapon switch menu and this update weapon switch menu. But basically, these three functions are going to be key to cycling through the weapons. So first, we grab all of the weapons in their order. And then if the current menu visibility is 0, we just reset the hovered weapon to the current weapon. And then if we don't currently have a hovered weapon and the length of all the weapons in our list is at least greater than 0, then we set the hovered weapon to the first weapon in our list. Just like safety checks to make sure we actually have a weapon before we start cycling through them. And if we don't have a weapon or we don't have any weapons to cycle through, we just return. And then, yeah, basically just to cycle through, we do all weapons and we find the hovered weapon, and this just gives us the index of wherever the object is in the array. So we'll get the current index of the hovered weapon here, and then to cycle through the weapon, because they're already in ordered from our sort custom we did up there, we can just add however many we want to cycle through to the current index and then do a modulus with the length of all the weapons. So this means it'll wrap around. So like 6 mod 5 would be 1. I think, actually, no, it would be 0. No, wait, it'll be 1. It'll be 1. Actually, wait, I can check in Godot here. Control Shift E. Yeah, it would be 1. That's a good trick. Change my mistake into a happy accident. In Godot, if you didn't know, one trick you can do is you can test expressions. So you can do like 1 plus 2 plus 3 times 5. You could select it, Control Shift E. If you ever try to do some quick maths in the Godot editor, that's a nice tip. So man, this tutorial is getting really long. It's definitely going to be the longest one yet. Yeah, we're cycling through all of the weapons, doing a modulus so it wraps around. So like, if we get to the length of the array, 5 plus, or 5 mod, 10 mod 5, this will be 0, 5 mod 5, 0. And yeah, basically modulus operator, probably already know that if you're this deep in the tutorial, but modulus, great for wrapping around indices of arrays. And then we set the hovered weapon to the new index in our list of all the weapons. So we change the hovered weapon, and that is going to be used in this show weapon switch menu. So we're going to, like, whichever weapon is hovered, we're going to blow that icon and name and whatnot up in the HUD so we can visually see that we have it selected. And then we are going to, when we show the weapon switch menu, we're just going to set this last activated menu thing, which, remember, will change the result of this get weapon menu visibility, because we determine if it's transparency based on the last activated menu in milliseconds. And then similarly, we are going to create this hide weapon switch menu function where we just set the last activated menu time to -99999, and that will just immediately set the transparency to 0, basically. And yeah, that's a lot of the setup. Now I'm going to add an export variable for this weapon select layout thing we created earlier, and I'm going to add that to my HUD scene. And I'm just going to assign that. Boom. So we'll spawn in this weapon node we created earlier, and we're going to spawn in a bunch of those when we show the menu, basically. So in the weapon switch menu function, we are going to add a bunch of code to spawn in our weapon select boxes So yeah, we have to populate the weapon slot column. So, oh, actually I can delete the weapon select layout since I have it as like a scene and I've assigned it to the player HUD up here. And then however many weapon columns you're going to have, just duplicate the vertical box containers here. And I have mine named as this, the name should be the same as well. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and if you press Control D on the one box, it's just gonna already name them with incrementing the number each time. So each of these are gonna be the weapon slots, and you should have as many slots as you need for your guns in your HUD menu. And then yeah, on the first update, I'm gonna spawn in the weapon select layout boxes into the columns. So weapon switch menu, get children. So that's going to grab these VBox containers. And then while they have less than 10 children, I am going to instantiate a weapon select layout instance of the weapon name and weapon icon box thing, and add it as a child to the weapon slot column. And then here I'm gonna have to go through and loop through all of the weapons in each slot, and we're basically just going to update all of the weapons here. So what am I doing here? So we're looping through all of the columns here, and then so slot GUI and weapon switch menu get children. And actually probably I'll name this weapon slot column so it's just easier to read there. So we're looping through all the columns the second time after we have already set up all of the weapon select layout instances. Got to loop through them all, and then yeah, we're gonna and also this 10 right here, I'm gonna make it this max weapons per slot. So we're looping through each weapon box in each slot basically in this nested loop. So 0 up until the max weapons in each slot. And then we are going to go get weapons in each slot, get weapons in slot, the function we set up earlier, and for whatever particular slot number. So it starts at 1, and then we increment it by 1 for, yeah, because like we're going to get the children, and then starts at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So just start at 1, then increment it. And then we do for I in range starting at 0 up until the max weapons per slot. And then we do get weapons in slot to get all the weapons. And then the weapon GUI, this will be the weapon select layout that we spawned in basically. And then we set all of those variables that we did on our little weapon box script. So it's only going to be visible if, so the weapon box is always going to be visible if it's the first one, because it's like always going to remain open to like show that that column's there. And then if the slot is equal to the hovered weapon slot and the length of the weapons in slot, it like, so if there's like 4 weapons in the slot, then we gotta show 4 boxes. But we only show those boxes in the case that it's the column of the hovered weapon. Hopefully that makes sense, but that's how Source Engine does it. I'm just like kind of getting similar behavior here. So then we go weapon GUI, just set the slot number to slot number of the weapon box to the slot number we're currently on. And then, yeah, we're only going to show the slot number if it's the first weapon box. And if there's at least 1 weapon in that column. And then we'll reset the expanded and show weapon icon both to false. And then we'll set them to true in the case that the weapon GUI is visible, aka it is a hovered weapon, or yeah, basically if it's a hovered weapon and if it's a visible weapon box. This is really detailed explanation. I'm kind of in pretty deep here, so I'm just going to keep rolling with it. But yeah, so if the weapon GUI is visible, hover weapon slot equals slot number, then we set it to expanded. And then just update the weapon name with the weapon name of the current weapon in the slot. Show weapon icon. Yeah, this is really hard to explain, like, all this in detail. I feel like this is not an easy to follow explanation, but yeah, updating the weapon icon, or we're showing the weapon icon if only if it's the hovered weapon, and then we update the weapon icon to the hovered weapons icon, and then we always got to call the weapon GUI update visibility function. And that is it for the update weapon switch menu function. And there's only one more big function we have to add, and that is most of the bulk of this HUD code. So yeah, I just decided to copy paste this function in because this video is getting like super long, but it's the unhandled input function, and basically this is what utilizes all those previous functions and allows us to scroll through our weapons. So I think this part's pretty self-explanatory. When you scroll up and down, cycle through the weapons back and forward. And when you press shoot, if the menu is open, then we go and select the hovered weapon and we hide the menu. This bit of code here is for the purpose of scrolling through the weapons using the number keys. So you can pause and copy this or look through it a little bit more. I just think the video is getting a bit long and these explanations are getting pretty in the weeds, but essentially we use the event key codes, and then we can check which number key we're pressing in relation to 0, and then we can match it to the slots. So key code -0 will give you like the actual number you're pressing, so like 1 through 9. You can match it to the slot, and then cycle through the weapons in that slot, basically. And then that is really all you need to add. Oh, also, last thing I swear, in this file, in the process function, we are hiding the menu, and we're just assigning the menu transparency with this get menu visibility function. And then on my weapon manager, I have this allow shoot function to prevent shooting in certain cases, such as this. So if the menu is open, we're not going to allow shoot because we're capturing the shoot event here when we actually select the chosen weapon. So boom, that is all the code done for our HUD. And then one thing to note, I have to add a little bit of code to my weapon manager to support this. And that is for when we set a new current weapon, then I'm going to update the weapon model on the weapon manager. So this is just how I have mine set up. Yours might be a bit different. But yeah, I'm using the setter, which tracks whenever this variable is set. So if the new value is not equal to the current weapon, then we will call the is equipped false on the current weapon, or set this variable, which also uses setter in my weapon resource. Set the new current weapon, and then call the update weapon model function. And then in here, oh, and then also one important thing, these export variables, this is kind of an annoying thing with them. They're going to get called before ready is called, before it's actually in the tree. So the weapon manager like won't be in the tree when this is first called. So that will cause an error in most cases. So I'm only calling update weapon model if it's inside the tree. And I'm already calling this on the onReady function, so we don't need to call it when it enters the tree anyway. And then, yeah, I'm going to clear out any prior weapon view and world model that I had spawned in. And boom, we are all done, if you can believe that. I don't know how long this tutorial has run. I'm going to guess this one was 2 hours, maybe even longer. I'm curious to check when I bring it into DaVinci. But yeah, now we got our awesome weapon manager working. it's beautiful, or if you've played Source games, it'll probably feel pretty beautiful. Do you have this Source style weapon switching? Feels just like the Source engine one, so like scroll through the number 4 slot pressing 4. You can also scroll through the whole thing with the scroll wheel. Feels pretty great in my opinion. I like it quite a lot. Played a lot of Source engine games growing up. So yeah, I got this weapon manager. Yeah, this tutorial ran pretty long. It's getting pretty late where I'm at as well. And yeah, that is the video. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. I hope somebody benefited from it. I know this one ran really long. I kind of felt like I got in the weeds on this one. But yeah, I'm glad to have this HUD done. This was the last major thing I had to do for this weapon manager series. And almost finishing out this FPS controller series. One thing I still do got to add is the animations for the guns. I have mostly working a setup where like the different guns will trigger different character animations on this character model here, and I have to set that up, so I have a few more little things to do, but overall, you know, it's looking pretty good, and pretty happy with progress so far. And yeah, that is the video. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you learned something. Have a great day.